Welcome to the Monday edition of Top Talkers. There's the scene from Parliament Hill on Saturday. What started as a small crowd turned into a throng of about 10,000 people to celebrate what's known as 420. Those who are into the legalization of marijuana and so on certainly showed up in droves on Saturday on Parliament Hill. Some very interesting pictures, panel.
Not something you see on Parliament
No question about that. You know what? It's not. Michael O'Byrne's here. John, good morning. John Brenner's here. And Melanie Adams here from Bob FM. It is not something you see every day.
It must have been very bizarre for whatever reporters were covering that. Because I'm guessing there might have been a smell. And that anyone you were anyone you were asking a question of, I'm assuming, would have a bit of a delayed response and might answer a question that they didn't hear.
Well, I'm sad the idea came late, but a couple of us were discussing this morning, we should have had a chip truck there or something, and we would have made a mint. On a more serious note, 10,000 people smoking pot on Parliament Hill in front of dozens of RCMP officers on 420. This is the biggest it's ever been, and many there to promote the idea of the legalization of marijuana.
Well, it really does raise the question, first of all, why weren't they all arrested? Which may sound a little bizarre. I think I'm pretty open-minded about a lot of this stuff, but I don't know, a crowd of 10,000 people on Parliament Hill smoking reefers, some of them so big they had to hold them with two hands. It just seems a little bizarre. You know, there's a lot of bizarre stuff up on Parliament Hill, but that is one of the most bizarre.
That is one.
And I just happened to be driving downtown about 5 o'clock on Saturday afternoon as they were coming off the hill. I think pot makes you deaf and blind because there were a lot of people crossing the street on red lights and just about got run over, but they didn't seem to care. There was something wrong with their brains.
I got a feeling if you're somebody who doesn't mind smoking pot on Parliament Hill, you don't care about traffic lights.
Good point.
Hey?
Yeah.
What do you make of all this, John? Is there a point to be made here? Because I know I was reading some articles about this after the fact, and some of the organizers saying, no, this is about trying to get Canada to legalize marijuana, when for a lot of people, and I would say the majority of the 10,000 who were there, it's just about smoking pot on Parliament Hill.
Yeah, I think the display was more important than the legislation that they were hoping to encourage. I support the medical use of marijuana because I've had instances in my own family where I think it may have been useful for them. And so I understand that aspect of it. And I know in the United States you've already had several jurisdictions.
2 states at least, right?
Yes.
That have recently legalized small amounts.
But in terms of recreational use of drugs, I mean, we're already blowing our brains out with booze. And I don't really understand the need to have one more legal avenue to...
But therein lies an argument right away. Booze is legal, and some people will say that booze is more damaging than pot could ever be.
Here's the thing that I think a lot of people don't think about, though, is, I mean, you see the goofy people on Parliament Hill, they're stoned, it's so funny, ha ha. But that weed comes from somewhere. I grew up in an area where there were an awful lot of open, wide spaces, fields, and you knew not to go there.
Right.
Because it was dangerous. And that's the thing. If they want it legalized, there has to be a way to get it to people without it being dangerous, because the booby traps and the violence in some of these fields
that goes with it
is not. I don't think that's worth anyone's right to get high on the street.
Right. Well, 57% of Canadians who were polled recently in an Angus Reid survey support the idea of the legalization of marijuana. 49% believe it should be legal regardless of other countries. 66% of those polled expect marijuana to be legal in the next 10 years, which wouldn't be surprising considering that the states of Colorado and Washington have already approved the idea. And now they're looking at taxing the sale, the growth, sale, and production of marijuana, and making good money off it. So a lot would argue, what's wrong with that?
Well, the people that want it legalized now, they'll be upset once it becomes legalized, and they charge the same kind of taxes that they charge on cigarettes and booze. You know, why not just leave it as it is? You know, it's a crime. It's a minor crime. Most people smoke recreational, not most people, but the people who do smoke recreationally.
Do it recreationally?
Do it recreationally, generally in their own homes, not on Parliament Hill every day, not out in public.
Right.
You know?
Right.
And there's the healthcare applications too of recreational use of marijuana, because we know what the downside health risks are of alcohol. We know what the downside risks are of legalized tobacco, and we know that there are downside risks to the use of marijuana, inhalation of the smoke, very, very potent smoke,
Right.
and I mean, aside from medical purposes where you're dealing with treatment of pain, I think what we're talking about is the recreational use of the drug.
Yeah. I've actually met some people who have that distinction of being able to use it for medical purposes, and they swear by it, and it's quite helpful in different situations. What may be bothersome to a lot of people is this. Another survey, this one from UNICEF, says more Canadian kids smoke marijuana than anywhere else in the Western world. Canada ranked #1 out of 29 countries in the percentage of young people smoking pot. 28% of the 11, 13, and 15-year-olds surveyed said they had smoked marijuana at some point during the last year.
And you can say, people can argue that it doesn't do anything, it doesn't really affect you, but I think back to when I went to high school and the kids who did that the most, and I've seen what their lives are like now, and it does affect you. If that becomes the thing you do when you're a kid, then other things aren't as important, things like finishing school. Like, I think adults seem to handle it better, like as with anything else, adults handle it better than kids. When kids are doing it, they don't have the life experience to know that other things are more important.
Interestingly enough, the Liberals did attend a seminar, a gathering on Saturday. They were, and the Green Party, of course, was there, oddly enough. But the Liberals, didn't they pass a motion that they would look at legalizing it, where the Harper government has said, no way, we're not going there?
I don't know. I don't recall hearing or reading about this this weekend. But we seem to be moving in that direction, slowly but surely. Whether we'll ever get there, even in our lifetimes, I don't know.
It's an interesting debate, though, isn't it? Especially on the heels of the decisions in a couple of American states.
Yeah.
I think a couple episodes of Trailer Park Boys should.
Well, they were there on Saturday.
Well, they had hoped to be there. They were in
They
town.
did show up
Oh,
eventually,
they did show
yeah.
up. Oh, okay.
I read somewhere that they didn't show up, and then I saw some pictures that, in fact, indicated they did. They were shooting a movie just down the street.
Yeah. And that's really what we should model our lives after, the Trailer,
Trailer
Park
Park,
Boys.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to go get my white T-shirt. I'll be right back.